always pressing on me, and that was a theme throughout my life, where he would press on me, and I would halfway turn to him, and then I would run back to myself and do it.
God would kind of press on you.
He would. He would press on me, and he wanted me, and I made professions of faith a couple of more times. I got baptized, meant nothing. I had said those prayers before. When I was in my mid-30s, I found out I was pregnant, and it was shocking to me. I never thought that children were in the card for me, and so suddenly I was faced with a decision, and I had to decide because I had been horrible my whole life, and now it was more than just me. There I was carrying this child, and I felt like I wasn't worthy to be anybody's mother. And so he was pressing on me, and I became willing. It was a willingness. I was desperate. That was the feeling, is I was desperate. And I remember sitting in a counselor's office, and he was like, well, you just feel too guilty. You just have a big guilt button, is what he said. And I said, no, you don't understand. I need to talk to a pastor.
I was really bent on trying to be accepted, wanting to be liked by my peers. I would do whatever the crowd I was with at the time, I would flow with that. So I got involved in various behaviors and activities that were sometimes illegal. You know, after an episode of doing something like that, I'd go home and I'd say, God, you know, please forgive me. I promise I'll never do it.
So you do start bargaining.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Did a lot of bargaining.
Absolutely. Yeah. God, if you'll forgive me, I won't do it ever again. But you know, a week or two later, I was right back at the same spot. So I knew I was losing traction. You know, to be honest with you, I'd read tracts. I'd seen Billy Graham stuff. I'd prayed a prayer. You know, some kind of what we call the sinner's prayer, 3,000 or 4,000 times.
Yeah, you're just checking. Yeah.
You know, I'm just making sure I've covered that base, you know, and so forth. That's when I began to realize my life is slipping. But I also had this tension because even though I had, quote unquote, prayed that prayer and done what was prescribed, nothing was changing. And I began to get a little bit desperate about it. I went home, I prayed the prayer again, and I didn't feel anything. And so I was kind of thinking, you know, there ought to be some angels singing, or, you know, my spine ought to tingle, or this great load lift off my shoulders or something. There was nothing. I mean, it was just like nothing at all. And then I began to kind of panic because I was like, man, maybe I'm so bad. And I couldn't imagine that because I thought, you know, there's murderers and people like that out there, but maybe I've crossed the line somewhere and God just is done with me. And that's when I began to really worry.
For me, God was just irrelevant. Didn't matter one way or another. I didn't think about it much, didn't care about it much.
Were you agnostic, do you think? Basically, you didn't even think about that, didn't even think that far about it?
I didn't. I mean, I wouldn't have labeled myself anything because it wasn't in my sphere at all. I had everything I was supposed to have. You know, my family had money. I mean, I was the most popular kid in school by any means, but I had friends and I played sports and I was a total flirt and had girlfriends, and you know, life was full of what it was supposed to be full of from what I knew. Probably my sophomore year of high school, there'd be these times in my life where I would literally go sit in this field out behind our house and feel this incredible emptiness. I have no idea what this was or where it was coming from or why it was there, and I had everything I was supposed to have, and it was just this echoing emptiness that when I actually slowed down long enough to breathe, it came to the surface. And I had no answers. You know, looking back at it now, I could tell that I was starting to pray, but I wasn't praying to anybody, and it was more of an internal processing of what is going on and what is this and where does this come from, and I think, you know, obviously looking back at it now, I can see that it was God starting to stir and awaken my spirit. At the end of my sophomore year of high school, I had a friend invite me to a youth event. This guy got up and he started talking about Jesus, and he started talking about who he was and what he did, and something in my spirit just leapt at that. And I'll tell you though, at that point in my life, it was so new and it was so fresh. It was more of me saying, something in me is responding to this, and I gotta know more.